There's a woman named Patricia, successful attorney from Chicago. Smart, accomplished, nearly 50 years old, and absolutely incapable of maintaining a stable relationship. She would enter relationships, lose interest almost immediately after intimacy, emotionally detach, and move on. In just 1 year, she reportedly went through more than a dozen partners. Eventually, even her therapist felt traditional therapy was not making much progress. Imagine your love life being so catastrophically broken that your therapist basically says, "Yeah, you might need a shaman." Jokes aside, though, this is where the story starts becoming genuinely strange. According to the book, Shaman, Healer, Sage, Patricia was eventually referred to Alberto Villoldo by her therapist. Villoldo is a psychologist and medical anthropologist who spent years studying shamanic healing traditions in Peru and the Amazon. And according to these traditions, emotional pain is not always viewed as abstract. It can supposedly harden into energetic structures inside the body. Spears, daggers, metallic bands, sharp quill-like objects surrounding the heart. Now, before your brain completely rejects this conversation, I know how insane this sounds. Invisible emotional weapons is not exactly a category covered in modern neuroscience textbooks. And yet the deeper question underneath all of this is surprisingly interesting. Why does emotional pain feel physical in the first place? Why do humans naturally say things like, heartbroken, gut punch, or stabbed in the back? Why does betrayal feel heavy? Why does anxiety tighten the chest? Why does grief physically hurt? The shamans described in Villoldo's book take these sensations very literally. And that brings us to Peru. It's nearly midnight inside an initiation cave called Amaru Mache. A vision quest ceremony is underway, a shamanic ritual intended to induce spiritual visions and psychological transformation. Then suddenly, a man collapses onto the ground. The man is Eduardo. He's one of the most respected shamans in Peru. The media knows who he is. Even the president of the country had reportedly consulted him. And right now he's on the cave floor sweating, convulsing, and foaming at the mouth. Alberto Villoldo rushes toward him. Eduardo tells him that another shaman had attacked him with black magic during the ceremony. He insists there's a dagger lodged near his heart, although there is no blood, no wound, nothing physically visible. And this is the moment where modern medicine quietly backs out of the room. Because Villoldo grabs a bottle of flower essences from Eduardo's altar, takes a mouthful, places his mouth over the area, and starts sucking the dagger out. Which sounds completely impossible until what happens next. Villoldo tastes metal, feels something break loose, and moments later starts violently vomiting. Meanwhile, Eduardo sits up feeling better now and calmly thanks him. Villoldo later writes that his stomach hurt for 2 days afterward and that he never performed the ritual again. Needless to say, spiritual dagger extraction is not an approved medical procedure. But this story introduces an important concept in these traditions: crystallized energies. According to shamans, certain emotional wounds harden into energetic structures inside the body. Not metaphorically, literally. They describe them as spears, arrows, bands around the chest, or sharp objects near organs. And before dismissing this entirely, think about how humans naturally talk about emotional pain. Gut punch, heartbroken, stabbed in the back. We constantly describe emotional suffering physically. The book suggests this may come from the limbic brain, the older survival part of the nervous system that evolved around physical danger. So maybe emotional threats still get processed in physical terms. The shamans simply take that idea much further. There's another account from the Amazon. A storekeeper travels for 3 days through the rainforest to visit a medicine woman because his life is slowly falling apart. Digestive problems, no energy, no appetite. His family life is deteriorating. After studying him through tobacco smoke, the healer tells him, "You have a spear in your abdomen." According to her, the spear was caused by envy and resentment from someone close to him, someone he had once helped but who now secretly betrayed him. Then she reaches toward his stomach and begins pulling at something invisible. The man screams, insisting he can physically feel it leaving his body. And afterward, the healer calmly tells him, "Be kind. But don't be naive." That's what makes these stories so interesting. The supernatural part sounds impossible, but the emotional logic feels familiar. In these traditions, jealousy becomes a spear, and betrayal becomes something sharp enough to wound the body itself. But the strangest story in the book might still be Patricia's. Because unlike shamans in caves or healers deep in the Amazon, Patricia feels recognizable, modern, educated, successful, which somehow makes what happened next even stranger. During an illumination session, a shamanic cleansing ritual meant to clear heavy emotional energies, Villoldo says he sensed something unusual around her chest. Her heart felt surrounded by narrow metallic shafts, almost like porcupine quills protruding outward. And when he touched one of these quills, Patricia suddenly began describing vivid imagery. She described seeing herself from the perspective of a young man in a rainforest village long ago. She saw huts burning, violent men attacking the village, her sister being assaulted. She fought back and was overpowered. Then she described being beaten, tied to a tree, and left there to die alone. And along with the imagery came intense emotions: rage, hatred, humiliation, disgust. Now, whether this represented subconscious symbolism, unresolved psychological material, or past life memories, even the book admits there's no way to know for certain. But emotionally, it mirrored her real life closely. Deep anger toward men, distrust, emotional detachment. As the quills were extracted, Patricia reportedly broke down sobbing and pounding the floor, releasing years of suppressed rage. And afterward, according to Villoldo and her therapist, her behavior began changing significantly. She eventually entered a stable relationship. The destructive cycle reportedly stopped. Now, you do not have to believe literal invisible objects are floating around inside us. But the broader idea becomes harder to dismiss completely, because modern science already agrees that emotional trauma affects the body physically. Stress changes breathing, digestion, hormones, posture, muscle tension. The body clearly responds to emotional pain. The shamans simply described this process differently, more visually, more dramatically. And maybe that's partly why these rituals affected people so deeply. Because understanding pain intellectually is not always enough. People can analyze their trauma for years and still repeat the same patterns. Maybe the nervous system responds differently to ritual, imagery, and physical acts of release, as if the body has always understood something the mind is still trying to explain.